97 Erick 877-973-7425. We should begin with impeachment, but this happened last night on Fox Business with Lou Dobbs.
I want to take up with you a parochial issue, if I may, and that is in Georgia, the state of Georgia. Brian Kemp, the governor who was elected without any equivocation about this, any reservation, he was elected because President Trump stood with him.
That's right. And
he won. He is now telling the President of the United States to go to hell. He is apparently tomorrow going to tap Kelly Loeffler, a big donor and Mitt Romney ally, to take the U.S. seat being vacated by Johnny Isakson.
I think it's unfortunate, but that's his prerogative, and he's going to do it. He's not going to be pushed around by the president or anybody else. And I think to a certain extent, it's some kind of parochial politics in Georgia.
Do you think that, do you really think that, or is this, in point of fact, a man who was never a Trump supporter, who, by the way, is going to tear asunder the Republican Party in Georgia with these acts?
Attempt to. At the end of the day, the president's going to be up in a year, and he will do very well in Georgia, and everybody else will get back in line. But right now, it's his prerogative to do this, and he's going to do it. So it may not be the wisest choice, but it's certainly the choice he's going to make.
That's Ed Rollins and Lou Dobbs talking about this. I suspect Lou Dobbs will be falling head over heels in love with Kelly Loeffler after she's announced. I have seen excerpts of her speech that she will make shortly after 10 o'clock this morning. She will come out as pro-life, against the abortion on demand culture, which she will call immoral. She will support Lindsey Graham's 20-week abortion ban legislation that's pending in the Senate and will soon be voted upon. She will call impeachment a circus, to which she is opposed. She will take on Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders by name and say essentially that the media would have you think every prominent woman in America is a liberal or a socialist, and she's a Christian, a Trump supporter, and supports capitalism. It's amazing to watch this effort by people who really don't know what's happening on the ground in Georgia, and the people who just want to hump the president's leg. Listen here, I'm voting for the president in 2020. Given the choice of Donald Trump or any of the Democrats, Donald Trump is a far superior choice to the Democrats, no matter the amount of shaming the Democrats do to try to suggest that supporting the president is racist or whatnot. Given the choice of a man who's kept the economy strong versus those who would destroy it, given the choice between a man who supports the culture of life versus those who support a cult of death, I am totally on board supporting the president in 2020. But the idea that there are people out there who just want to hump the president's leg, that they want to get his attention, that they fling poo at anyone who doesn't support the president in the most strident terms, I think is absurd. Believe it or not, there are a lot of people in the United States of America who lean to the right, who support Republicans, but they're not huge on the president. They're not big fans of the president. I'm kin to a number of people. They voted for him begrudgingly in 2016 because of Hillary Clinton. They don't particularly care for him. They would love some alternatives, and they have flirted with trying to hold him accountable by they may support him but support Democrats in Congress just so there's some level of accountability they don't think Republicans are giving him. These are the sorts of people you can win back with a conservative who is not aligned with the president in personality but is aligned with the president in agenda. The idea that everybody's got to clown themselves and say stupid stuff like Lou Dobbs said last night on TV about Brian Kemp trying to destroy Georgia and not standing with the president. He's betraying the president. I'm sorry, but the president has no say in the Senate appointments of the various states. Now, I got to tell you, I know there are a lot of people listening who are mad at Brian Kemp as well, because they bought this idea that Doug Collins needs to be in the Senate. No, Doug Collins does not need to be in the United States Senate. He needs to be where he is right now, scoring points against impeachment. If Brian Kemp were to put Doug Collins into the Senate today, we would not have this.
But it's coming back tomorrow, and what's more sad about tomorrow is we're coming back not with what you have always seen in impeachment. And you go back into the history of Clinton and Nixon and all, that comes to the Judiciary Committee with weight and gravitas. It does not anymore. In fact, it's a shell of itself, the Judiciary Committee is. And how are we going to start that? We're We're going to start it with let's talk about what an impeachable offense is. When most of this committee on our side, on the Democrat side, has already said we need to impeach him. Well, if they already know they need to impeach him, why are we wasting time? I'll tell you why. Because they have a problem. They're having a problem dealing with the facts that just came out of public hearings and private depositions. They're having a problem because this will be the first impeachment that has ever had with honestly not just disputed facts on why they want to impeach the president, but actually contradicted facts on was it a quid pro quo? Was there actual pressure? Was there anything actually done? When the two participants on the call, the President of the United States and Mr. Zelensky, both said nothing was wrong, and Mr. Zelensky has said many times over, we felt no pressure.
They did feel no pressure. Zelensky has said that. They didn't do an investigation, and they got the money. Here's a little more Doug Collins.
But we have a saying down south is if something's going to be important, my mom would tell me, you're going to go on, I want you to go put your Sunday best on, and we're going to go to town. Well, a few months ago, the Democrats put on their, quote, Sunday best, and they said, we're going to have rules for impeachment, and it's going to take care of everything, and we're going to actually take care of the president. The president will have a chance to actually be a part of the process and look at witnesses and question. And this is where we're at now. The Judiciary Committee was the only place to do that. Well, starting tomorrow, they fail miserably in trying to provide any modicum of fairness in this process. The president's not sending a counsel tomorrow, and he shouldn't send a counsel tomorrow because there's nothing for them to ask. Why would they want to sit back through a constitutional law class, which most of them had to suffer through in law school? Tomorrow provides nothing except a dreary-eyed, drowsy appraisal for this country to watch as the impeachment process slowly drags on with no direction, no focus, because they're having one big problem. And the big problem is the president did nothing wrong, and they can't prove it.
You put him in the Senate today, you get rid of that. Well, so there's a big issue taking shape with this inquiry in the House. We've got the Schiff report from the Intelligence Committee, 300 pages now on impeachment, and they got phone calls. They got phone calls with Lev Parnas, Rudy Giuliani, and Devin Nunes. Now, this is interesting, and let me deal first with what it shows, and then the outrage over obtaining the phone calls. Adam Schiff, in his press conference about this, Devin Nunes had contact with Lev Parnas, who is the Rudy Giuliani associate who's been indicted by the federal government for essentially taking money and giving it to campaigns. He's taken money from Ukrainians, or Russians rather, and he is Ukrainian, took money from Russians and spread it around trying to get a marijuana distribution facility open in Nevada. He missed the deadline, and then he also claimed he had all sorts of information from Ukraine. It reads like the corrupt prosecutor from Ukraine was playing people in this country for the fool, in particular Rudy Giuliani. Well, Rudy Giuliani appears to have reached out to Devin Nunes and asked Nunes to talk to Lev Parnas, who had all the goods on Ukraine, supposedly. Again, we now know it appears that a lot of what he had wasn't really true, but he was selling it to a variety of Republicans. Well, here's Adam Schiff on this information from Nunes.
The report mentions cites call records involving ranking member Nunes. Did you speak to him or inquire about those with his office? And do you believe he should recuse himself later today on this vote? Also, do you or your staff plan to present this report to the Judiciary Committee in person?
The rules adopted by the Judiciary Committee provide that our staff counsel will present the report to the committee, so that's what we expect will take place. In terms of the ranking member, it won't surprise you, I'm going to reserve comment. It is, I think, deeply concerning that at a time when the President of the United States was using the power of his office to dig up dirt on a political rival, that there may be evidence that there were members of Congress complicit in that activity. Now, there's a lot more to learn about that, and I don't want to state that that is an unequivocal fact. But the allegations are deeply concerning. Our focus is on the president's conduct first and foremost. It may be the role of others to evaluate the conduct of members of Congress.
So there's a lot of Republican outrage over Adam Schiff and the Democrats getting these phone records. It appears the phone records might have come from Lev Parnas, who has been willing to cooperate with the impeachment inquiry. And he has his lawyer has reached out. His lawyer has confirmed on social media last night that these phone calls between Devin Nunes and Lev Parnas happened. There were a series of phone calls between Nunes and Parnas. One lasted over 8 minutes. The others were very short, as if he was just calling, no one answered, getting voicemails or some such. And Republicans were taken aback that the Democrats had these phone calls. They had no knowledge in advance the Democrats had gotten this phone information. They did not know the impeachment investigators had them, and they're screaming bloody murder about it. One of the reasons is because in addition to having phone calls with a member of Congress, they have phone call records between Giuliani and John Solomon. John Solomon is the opinion writer / reporter / quasi-journalist at The Hill. And full disclosure, I'm not a big fan of his. I think a lot of what we believe on the right is wrong. Ukraine was not involved in the way a lot of people claim. There were some people in Ukraine who were, but a lot of what we got comes from John Solomon, and I think a lot of his reporting is wrong. But you're not allowed to say that because he goes on Fox News, and if you go on Fox News, it might as well be that Jesus said it. I think facts actually matter here, and I think he has poisoned the well when it comes to a lot of facts. But we need to be honest and open here with what's going on. Republicans are outraged that the Democrats have records not just from a member of Congress, but from a reporter, and the Democrats are giving a huge pass to all of it. Let's say the roles were reversed. Let's just say that we have phone records between Adam Schiff and Rachel Maddow at MSNBC, a partisan activist who has a TV show on a news network. If Republicans were conducting a hearing and they had phone records between Adam Schiff and Rachel Maddow, and they exposed it to the world that they were in communication during a critical period to discuss messaging on politics, the Democrats and the press would be beside themselves in outrage and would be screaming about freedom of the press. That it's a Republican and a right-of-center journalist who appears on Fox News, it is notable that members of the press are absolutely quiet about this, that other members of the press have no qualms about the Democrats getting these records between Devin Nunes and John Solomon. They absolutely don't. They're totally fine with it. But here's the reality. If the Republicans were to do this, they were to get records of Adam Schiff talking to Rachel Maddow and expose it, there really would be nothing wrong with it. It would suggest they're doing a thorough job in an investigation. And the same with Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff having records. He didn't get the records from Devin Nunes. He didn't seize Devin Nunes' phone records. He got somehow or another, and we assume through a court process, through the grand jury process. In fact, probably through the Mueller process. And remember that they sought grand jury information related to these individuals, and a judge granted it to them. So through a legal grand jury process that involved a federal prosecutor, they got these phone records. Now, I don't think that's outrageous at all that they got these phone records. Here's what I find outrageous. They got these phone records. These phone records show a member of Congress coordinating with Rudy Giuliani at the height of the effort to smear our ambassador to Ukraine and claim that Ukraine was undermining Russia. They've got that. They've got phone records between a member of Congress and a journalist, and that journalist and these other individuals who were all trying to build the story about Ukraine that we now know wasn't really true. We've got phone records between this guy who's been indicted and this congressman, all at the height of this stuff, and that's all the Democrats have done with it? They got nothing. They can show that Rudy Giuliani and a journalist and possibly a member of Congress were trying to steer the president's agenda and shape the president's opinion. But that's not about the president, and that's not impeachable about the president. And that's the remarkable thing here, is that the Democrats clearly had a level of competence that I did not know they possessed to be able to get all of this information. And it is staggering. It is outrageous. Now that they got the phone records, but then they got the phone records and they can't do anything with it. I mean, the Republicans are running circles around them on this. They've got all of this information and they can't shift public opinion at all. That's the outrageous part. I mean, that just shows you why this is a matter that should be left to the voters next November instead of trying to do an impeachment of the president. The Democrats have all that stuff and they can't even get their act together. Let the voters decide.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson, the information you need and the truth you demand.
He tells it like it is.
Yeah, the phone number 877-97 Eric 877-973-7425. You can't call now. Actually, you can't actually call. The phone lines are turned off. My producer is at the dentist. He set his appointment we didn't have a radio show 6 months ago when he made his appointment, and he's also the call screener. So he's at the dentist. All right. We got to get back to more of this impeachment stuff. The Democrats just aren't happy with where things are headed. They got all sorts of problems. And they're trying to rush now impeachment because they're worried about swing voters and they're worried about swing districts. And they feel like if they stay on this too long, that swing voters are going to get upset. This is a CNN reporter talking about the Democratic rumblings.
Or you're now hearing rumblings within Democratic saying maybe we should just go with censure, or not really knowing how to move forward on this, given where the president is and given where Republicans are, and given that Republicans, especially Elise Stefanik, some of the more moderate ones, and Will Hurd, after the 2 weeks of testimony that they heard from fact witnesses, did not move at all. They said that they do not believe that anything the president did was impeachable, and in fact they seem to be protecting the president more than they were prior to these 2 weeks.
Yeah. They got issues. They got political issues. They got timing issues. They've got partisan issues. They've got internal squabbling over how to proceed. Do they do a censure? Do they try impeachment? They know it's not going to get through the Senate, so is it really worth their time to do? They really wanted it to be bipartisan. Here's Al Green talking on Neil Cavuto, and hat tip to him, by the way, for being willing to go on Neil Cavuto's show.
There are no racial issues going on here. Now, I know you want to expand this. Do you worry that as things stand now, there's just not enough for you to force this president out of office?
Well, I would say this to you. We always put the racial issues aside. I just choose not to. Those who choose to can do this. But I think that there is enough here to impeach the president. We have to do what we must.
We've got record low unemployment for African Americans, though, right?
Well, the Constitution doesn't say anything about an exemption for record low unemployment for anybody.
Yes. But they would like to have it be bipartisan, and they haven't been able to get it to be bipartisan. And that's kind of their problem in all of this, is they haven't been able to mount a case for bipartisanship. And if they can't make it bipartisan, how do they proceed? Here's Liz Cheney with the Republican response on all this.
We have been pointing out and talking about now for several weeks since the impeachment process began the extent to which the process was fundamentally unfair. And so I would just ask people to remember that they have failed despite the fact that they had a process that basically put everything tilted in their direction. The Democrats were able to act as judge and prosecutor. The Democrats were able to select every single witness. The Democrats were able to prevent and did prevent witnesses from answering Republican questions. The Democrats decided what the American people would see and when. The Democrats decided the timing on the release of important pieces of transcripts. They still have not released the transcript of the IC Inspector General. And so the Democrats essentially stacked the deck in their favor. And despite the fact that they did this, and even with every unfair advantage and unprecedented advantage they gave themselves, including preventing the president from having any access to the proceedings, preventing his counsel from having any participation in the proceedings, they now have come out of this and fundamentally failed to prove their case. So,
yeah, look, they're headed to the Judiciary Committee today, and I'll pot up the audio here in a little bit as this hearing takes shape, and you can hear some of it. Also have some interesting words about from Jerry Nadler back during the Clinton impeachment. But when we come back, Kamala Harris has dropped out of the presidential race, and suddenly Democratic voters and progressive activists are slamming the racism of the Democratic Party and the racism of the process, the very racism of the process that got America its first black president, Barack Obama. It's such a terrible, terrible, awful, racist process. Well, there's some news happening right now. It appears that the president has left NATO early, and he canceled a press conference. He had a 2-hour press conference yesterday, but if press reports are right, so there's a video circulating of Emmanuel Macron, Boris Johnson, and Justin Trudeau laughing about the president's press conference with Macron. It was, let's just be honest, it was a very interesting press conference that the president had. And, they were laughing about it. Justin Trudeau, you can see him in this video say, you can see the president's staff's jaw drop during this press conference. And now the British media is saying, and let's be clear here, this is the British media saying that President Trump embarrassed his staff. But he had a press conference a short time ago with Angela Merkel, and he was asked about Justin Trudeau. And let me see if I can. I'm doing this on the fly here as the audio has just come out. Let's see if I can get this.
Did you have a video of Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night?
Well, he's two-faced.
Do you think that Germany is too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%. And I guess he's not very happy about it. I mean, you were there, a couple of you were there, and he's not paying 2%, and he should be paying 2%. It's Canada, they have money, and they should be paying 2%. So I called him out on that, and I'm sure he wasn't happy about it, but that's the way it is. Look, I'm representing the U.S., and he should be paying more than he's paying, and he understands that. So I can imagine he's not that happy, but that's the way it is.
That was the president in a press conference with Angela Merkel. She sat very stoically, not moving, and we'll see where this goes. News is, and the president, he's only leaving a few hours earlier than had apparently been planned anyway, and we'll still have a meeting with the Danish prime minister. People were speculating that would be canceled. No. We've got the Judiciary Committee. It's going to start at 10 a.m. with the impeachment stuff. I will pot up the audio when it is impossible to ignore it. We're going to do our best to ignore it at the beginning because it's just going to be opening statements and formalities. One of the people who's going to testify is an impeachment scholar, a legal scholar, who's going to say that what the president did is the worst thing ever done by a president in American history. Let me see if I can find the exact quote for you here. Yes. So one of the impeachment witnesses, this is from Kyle Cheney at the Politico, will say President Trump's actions toward Ukraine are by far the worst conduct in presidential history, and is the reason impeachment was included in the Constitution. Now, I want to put this in perspective for you. The president calling Ukraine's president, after withholding some money from Ukraine, asking Ukraine to conduct an investigation into the Bidens and the 2016 election, the CrowdStrike stuff, and the president then releasing the money without Ukraine having done the investigation. This is, according to this impeachment, quote, by far the worst misconduct in presidential history. Y'all, we have had a president take the land of Cherokee Indians and kill them en masse as they marched across this country under American military arms. We have had a president of the United States suspend habeas corpus, even though the Constitution says only Congress can do that. We have had an American president put American citizens in internment camps. We have had a president of the United States resegregate the American military and operate a service of brown shirts who harass newspapers and citizens who dare to criticize him. That would be Woodrow Wilson. But somehow the president making a phone. We've had a president lie under oath in a court of law to obstruct an American citizen's right to justice. And we've had a president help cover up the break-in of his political opponent's campaign offices. But somehow this president making a phone call to a foreign leader asking for a favor that did not actually happen and giving them money even after they didn't do the favor because the money was lawfully appropriated by Congress, that is somehow the worst act. This is why I can't take impeachment seriously. Listen, I don't think the president should have done it. I think it was stupid for him to do. He should not have done it. And there's no there. The president should not have done what he did, but he did it. The president should not have done what he did, but he didn't get anything out of it. The president should not have done what he did, but is it a high crime misdemeanor or bribery? It's certainly not bribery, and that's what the Democrats are now saying is that it's bribery. It's not bribery. It is not bribery for the president to ask for a favor and then hand them money that was lawfully appropriated by Congress. Bribery would be if the president took his own money and gave it to Ukraine's president and said, here's this money. Now go launch this investigation and turn up evidence to show Joe Biden guilty of something. He didn't do that. I'm yelling. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be yelling. Sounding like Hannity. Y'all, listen. I'm not a big fan of the president's, and he knows this. We talk on the phone. We haven't in a while. But I'm supporting him in 2020. I didn't support him in 2016. I didn't vote for any of them in 2016. I voted third party because I didn't like Hillary. She'd be terrible, and I really thought Trump would be terrible. And he's wound up to be a much better president than I ever expected. He's kept his promises. He has he's not just judges, but tax cuts and deregulation and his appointments within the executive branch. He's done a lot of stuff I don't like, but he's done a lot of stuff I like. George W. Bush did a lot of stuff I liked, and he did a lot of stuff I didn't like. And I think when in the run-up to 2020, he's now a known quantity. He was a hypothetical in 2016, and a lot of people were telling me, trust him, and they were behaving terribly. And why did I want to trust him when the president does seem to have this unique ability to draw out the worst in people? But he's been a good president by and large. His policies have been sound. I think character counts, and I said so in 2016, and I did not vote for either party because character counted, and I both thought they had terrible character. But over 100 million Americans disagreed with me and said, you know what, better him than her. And I'm at that point, better him than them. Hey, I just, y'all, if the president had done something really bad, you would be able to get Republicans. And see, this is the underlying problem with the Democrats' presumptions, is they have convinced themselves that no matter what the president did, no Republican would stand up to him. They really have convinced themselves that if the president stood on the street on Fifth Avenue and killed someone, all the Republicans would defend him. And I don't believe that is so. I believe there are a lot of Republicans who behind the scenes dislike the president and aren't willing to say so publicly. You know, that's one of the kind of the annoying things about this outrage over Brian Kemp is that there are a lot of people out there, I do believe, on the Republican side who actually hate the president, but they're not willing to stand up and say so publicly. I'm going to be honest with you. I'll tell you exactly what I believe. You will never have to guess what I think because it is my job to tell you what I think. You don't have to agree with me. I mean, it's why we have phone calls. Although you can't call in right now because Charlie's getting his teeth cleaned. But nonetheless, normally you can call in. You can go on Facebook. You can leave a comment. Feel free to disagree with me. I don't care. This is America. We're allowed to disagree. We can agree to disagree. But it frustrates me to see so many Republicans who behind the scenes badmouth the president and they won't say anything publicly. I think that's very two-faced of them. But it also frustrates me to see a lot of Democrats who publicly rah-rah impeachment and behind the scenes, they're thinking, why the hell are we doing this? We got an election in less than a year. And privately, some of the Democrats you're going to see today demanding the president be impeached are behind the scenes saying, wait a second, guys, we got an election in less than a year and he's thoroughly beatable unless we get distracted. The entire process is driven by the media these days. So many of these people want to seal clap in front of the media and tell people what they want to hear, as opposed to actually telling you what they think. Philip tells me lots of people are agreeing on or disagreeing on Facebook. It's okay. I don't read the comments. Never read the comments. I don't care if you disagree. We're Americans. We're allowed to agree to disagree. What I hate, though, on both sides, it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats, and it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans. It's all of them. It's even libertarians, the few that there are, is that they'll tell you something in public that they don't believe in private. In private, a number of the Republicans you're going to see today on the Judiciary Committee loathe the president. In private, a number of these people badmouth the president in private. He's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's out of his depth. But for all the people around him, the president would lead us off to war. He would bankrupt the country. He would do something stupid. Of course the president did this. This is what the president does, blah, 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 blah. That's what they say behind the scenes. I talk to these people. No, I'm not going to out them. I'm not going to shame them publicly. They say it in private because they know the president will go after them and you'll turn on them. That's part of the problem, that these people aren't willing to be public about what they think, is because they know the reaction from people inside the president cults of personality will be to savage them and destroy them. I mean, look at the reaction to Kelly Loeffler. No one even knows what she is, but oh my God, she gave money to Mitt Romney. She must be terrible. Donald Trump gave money to Mitt Romney too. So they don't want to be public with it. But the same is true with the Democrats. I know some of the Democrats. And behind the scenes, they think this. And now some of them are true believers, and they really do think what the president did is bad and we should impeach him. But some of them are like, this is nuts. We got an election in a year. Well, let's do the fishing expedition, find all the dirt, and use it in ads. And they don't actually want to go down this road. Now, some of these people are starting to speak up, and they're starting to say, wait a second, impeachment needs to be bipartisan. They don't actually believe that the Republicans will always refuse to impeach the president. They do actually believe that some of the Republicans would be willing to speak up. I mean, for God's sakes, you got Will Hurd out there. Will Hurd, a Republican on the Intelligence Committee, was in the CIA. Will Hurd does not like the president of the United States. Will Hurd is leaving Congress. He is retiring. He's a congressman from South Texas. He's the only black Republican in the House of Representatives, with Mia Love gone. He does not like the president of the United States. And even Will Hurd is not buying the impeachment stuff. Even Will Hurd thinks that the Democrats have not made their case with the information they've given. It is striking to see a guy like Will Hurd. I mean, let's go back from 2 weeks ago to Will Hurd in the impeachment process in the Intelligence Committee. This is long. We'll skip around in here, but just listen to some of this.
Thank you, Dr. Hill, Mr. Holmes, for your years of service to this country, and I appreciate y'all being here today. Throughout this process, I have said that I want to learn the facts so we can get to the truth. So why are we here? Because of two things that occurred during the president's July 25th phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The use of the phrase, "do us a favor," though, in reference to the 2016 presidential election, and the mention of the word Biden. I believe both statements were inappropriate, misguided foreign policy, and it's certainly not how the executive, current or in the future, should handle such a call. Over the course of these hearings, the American people have learned about a series of events that, in my view, have undermined our national security and undercut Ukraine, a key partner on the front lines against Russian aggression. We've heard of U.S. officials carrying uncoordinated, confusing, and conflicting messages that created doubt and uncertainty in Kyiv at a time when a new reformist administration has just taken office and was ready to fight corruption and work with us to advance other U.S. objectives. I disagree with this sort of bungling foreign policy. But through these hearings, many of my colleagues have unwittingly undermined the Ukrainian government by suggesting that it is subservient to the United States, and without the United States, they wouldn't be able to function. The Ukrainians, as you stated, Mr. Holmes, is in a hot war with Russia, and they are holding their own. We could benefit from the experience of the Ukrainians, not the other way around. While I thought the Intelligence Committee would actually be engaged in oversight of the intelligence and national security communities, unfortunately, we are not. We're here talking about one of the most serious constitutional duties we have as members of Congress, the impeachment and removal of the President of the United States. Over the past weeks, we've learned a few things. The officials on the July 25th call have many different opinions on whether the call was concerning or not, and just because Vice President Biden is running for president does not mean that corruption related to Burisma, Ukraine's largest natural gas company, and Americans' ties to it are not concerning. There's also a lot we do not know. We have not heard from Rudy Giuliani. We haven't heard from Hunter Biden. I'd like to know more about both of their activities, why they talk to whom and to whom.
Yep, seems like we're missing that. And otherwise, there's nothing impeachable here, according to Will Hurd, who doesn't like the president, who's leaving Congress, who should be one of the one of the Republicans that the Democrats should be able to persuade, and they haven't been able to persuade him. He's got nothing to lose, and they haven't been able to persuade a guy like that. Because what the president did, I think it was dumb of the president to do. He shouldn't have done it. Should have known better. It got him into an impeachment situation. He knew before this that there were people inside the White House who didn't like him, who were trying every which way to undermine him. He knew this whistleblower was one of those people. And he did it anyway. Couldn't help it. Lack of self-control. I get it. But let the voters deal with this in November. There's no reason to impeach the president for this. Let the voters deal with it. And the fact that the Democrats feel the need to do this has more to do with their need to placate the progressive base to avoid a revolt than anything else.
Well connected and well respected.
Can we get away from impeachment, please? I got a little more audio, and we'll play it. But we got the Kelly Loeffler speech coming up. We've got the impeachment inquiry in the Judiciary Committee coming up. I've got some more audio from little Eric Swalwell. I shouldn't say. I'm kind of opposed to the everybody's got a nasty nickname movement, but the guy does annoy me. The fact that guy thought he could be president of the United States, oh my goodness. But we got him. We got some Doug Collins. In fact, let me go on and play the Doug Collins audio here from, he was on with, this looks like, he was just on Fox, on America's Newsroom.
It's a new day, new
few witnesses, new little shiny hearing room. We're moving to Ways and Means. But guess what? Same old sad problem. They have no facts. They can do anything they want to do. They can have law professors ad nauseum bore us to death today. But at the end of the day, their problem is they don't have the facts to impeach this president. So they're trying to just sham it through as best they can to convince the American people they actually have something.
Yep. That's kind of where we're headed with this. Now, a word, if you will, away from all the politics of the day. We got stuff besides politics happening in America today. In fact, we have some of the most important stuff in America today is without any politics at all, or so we can hope that it is without politics. It is important.
Why would I betray you?
We all have our secrets. We just didn't get to yours yet. The world is arming faster than we can respond.
Where's 007?
Oh, yes, my friends. The James Bond trailer has dropped. Yes, I cannot wait. April 8th, 2020 will be the next James Bond. No Time to Die. I do have to agree. My buddy Aaron Earls on Twitter, he tweeted out, every time a new Bond movie comes out, I'm like, wait, haven't they already used the name before? It's true. All of the names sound alike, and I guess it's the no and the never, and all of that. No Time to Die, Spectre, Skyfall, Quantum of Solace, Casino Royale, GoldenEye, Die Another Day, Goldfinger, Doctor No, Tomorrow Never Dies, License to Kill, The World's Not Enough, Live and Let Die, Diamonds Are Forever, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, For Your Eyes Only, View to Kill, Moonraker, Never Say Never Again, From Russia with Love, You Only Live Twice. That's not a James Bond one. They all do kind of sound alike, though. Doctor No. No, okay, yeah, You Only Live Twice is one. Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, For Your Eyes Only, No Time to Die, Die Another Day, The World Is Not Enough, Tomorrow Never Dies, The Living Daylights. They all kind of sound the same, but come on, let's just admit. I like Daniel Craig as James Bond. So I'm a big James Bond fan. I have been watching the very first James Bond movie I ever saw was For Your Eyes Only. No, I take that back. I think I saw, I was too young to see Moonraker. For Your Eyes Only, I think I was 6 years old, and the family wanted to go see 30.
In the theater, and then my aunt and uncle took us to see Octopussy and A View to a Kill. I just did. I don't like to say that word, but that's the name of the movie. But I've seen them all, and my oldest has seen all of them, and we're absolutely going to go see this James Bond. And I like Daniel Craig. I do. He's a good James Bond.
welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425, although you can't call me right now. The phone lines are absolutely closed off, and the reason they're closed off is because my call screener had a dental appointment. We'll get them open. Look, happening right now. Governor Kemp is speaking. Kelly Loeffler about to begin speaking. I want to bring you that audio. It is happening in the governor's office at this moment.
For our future, help champion policies and people that will build a better Georgia. There's one thing I know for certain when it comes to making significant reforms, and that is this: we are better and stronger together. Today, I'm proud to announce that conservative businesswoman and political outsider Kelly Loeffler will be Georgia's next U.S. Senator.
I've been saying Loeffler. Loeffler. Turn it down for the applause. It hurts my ear. This is happening right now in the state capitol. The governor just announcing Kelly Loeffler, not Loeffler, Loeffler, to be the U.S. Senator. Oh, and people are complaining. Boo-hoo.
As many of you know, Kelly grew up on a family farm, growing soybeans and raising cattle, showing animals through 4-H like our girls did, learning about commodity pricing and futures literally on the countertop of her kitchen counter. Kelly has worked her way through high school, college, and graduate school. She began building a successful career and found her way to Georgia, where she met her husband, Jeff, and grew companies that have created jobs, economic opportunity, and prosperity here in Georgia and beyond. From the farm to the New York Stock Exchange, Kelly has really lived the American dream. And I'm confident that she will work every single day to keep that dream alive for our children, grandchildren, and for the generations of Georgians and Americans to come. Like Senator Perdue, Kelly is an outsider. Like Ivanka Trump, Kelly is smart, accomplished, and a savvy businesswoman. And like our president, Kelly is ready to take on the status quo, the politically correct, and the special interest. She knows that Washington is fundamentally broken. She knows that we need to drain the swamp. She knows that, as our soon-to-be senior Senator David Perdue says, the road to socialism will not run through Georgia. Kelly Loeffler will stand with our president, Senator Perdue, and their allies in the House and Senate to keep America great. She will end this impeachment circus in Washington and get Congress back to working for the people of our country. She is a woman of faith and conviction who believes without a doubt that life begins at conception. She will champion the pro-life cause in Washington and stop the radical left's abortion on demand agenda. Kelly wants to strengthen our immigration laws and finish the border wall so we can stop Mexican drug cartels from flooding our streets right here in Georgia with drugs.
I'm going to pot down the governor here for a minute. I think it's very interesting and notable what he's doing here. This is the governor sounding somewhat on defense, and I think understandably so. There are a lot of angry people. This is on the Facebook Live. There are 286 people watching. I'm one of them feeding you this audio, and there are some angry people on here in the comments attacking the governor. That sell out, one and done, this is ridiculous, et cetera, et cetera. And he's trying to make the case that Loeffler, though all of the Trump supporters do not like her, will be one of them. He's got to draw somewhat of a line here. One of the reasons he wants her is because she can relate to suburban voters and is not defined by Donald Trump. Just my gut reaction is he's going a little bit too far in defining her instead of letting her define herself. assuring people he's made the right pick. And that's where the defense is here right now. And this is kind of my take as he's doing this, happening live right now. The governor about to introduce Kelly Loeffler, and it's Loeffler, according to him, not Loeffler, which is what I've been saying, that essentially he wants people to know he isn't betraying the base, as so many of them claim, which is why he's going overboard and saying Loeffler will do X, Y, and Z when she gets to the Senate.
We've seen firsthand the impact of political outsiders like Donald Trump and David Perdue in Washington, D.C. It is time that we send them some reinforcements to keep America great. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our next U.S. Senator, Kelly Loeffler.
Hot microphone. All right, she's going to take over and speak. All righty. He's got a who's who of the state's leadership there. The speaker's there. The attorney general's there. The lieutenant governor's there.
Good morning. I want to start this morning by thanking...
Oh, where'd the audio go? Come on, bring it back. Oh.
...placed in me. Thank you, Governor.
No, you will.
Thank you.
You're going to do right.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Senator Isaacson for his years of service to our state and our nation. He's a true statesman for Georgia, and we keep him and his family in our thoughts and prayers. I know I have a lot of work to do to earn the trust and support of my fellow Georgians. So for starters, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Kelly Loeffler. I'm a devoted wife, a proud patriot, and a devout Christian. I have lived the American dream, and I am blessed to stand here today, but it is a long way from where I came from. I grew up on a family farm, the fourth generation of corn and soybean farmers. I was shy. I had braces on my legs, on my teeth. We lived simply. Life revolved around farming, church, school, and 4-H. There was a rhythm to our lives. We planted in the spring. I showed cattle at the county fair in the summers. And in the fall, we harvested. Sundays were for church and family. I attended public schools and helped pay my way through school, waiting tables. Hard work, faith, and family. This is not a political slogan. This is the foundation of everything I believe. I'm not a career politician or even someone who's run for office. I've spent the last 25 years building businesses, taking risks, and creating jobs. I haven't spent my life trying to get to Washington. So here's what folks are going to find out about me. I'm a lifelong conservative, pro-Second Amendment, pro-Trump, pro-military, and pro-wall. I make... I make no apologies for my conservative values, and I look forward to supporting President Trump's conservative judges. I am strongly pro-life. The abortion on demand agenda is immoral. In the Senate, I look forward to supporting S-160, Senator Lindsey Graham's 20-week abortion ban.
I'm raising and lowering the volume. The clapping drives me crazy. It's so close to the microphone.
And when it comes to protecting innocent life, I look to God because every life is a blessing. In Washington, I will work with President Trump to continue the incredible economic progress our nation has seen. Because of our president's policies, we're growing our economy and jobs at a record pace. Every day, new jobs are created for working moms and dads, for young graduates, and for that waitress just looking for a chance. I've been called soft-spoken, but I've also been called a lot worse. In Congress, In Congress, I may not be the loudest voice in the room, but you don't have to be shrill to be tough. And when it comes to fighting for Georgia, I will never back down. No one will fight harder for our state, for our nation, for our president, and for our conservative values. Because here's the thing, contrary to what you might see in the media, not every strong American woman is a liberal. Many of us are conservatives and proud of it. With all of the important things to be done in Washington and here at home in Georgia, I am angered by the impeachment circus. I oppose it. It's a distraction and a sideshow. Just imagine what could be done if Democrats would stop fighting President Trump and playing politics and start working together. Think what could be done for hardworking families, creating jobs, expanding access to health care, keeping America safe and strong. Make no mistake, Washington Democrats want to overturn much more than an election. They want to overturn our way of life because they resent America's success. They can't tell you how much their socialist ideas will cost. They don't care how many jobs will be destroyed. And they can't even agree that they want to protect our borders. The only thing they agree on is that they hate Donald Trump. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, that whole socialist gang in Washington, they've taken over the Democrat Party, and they will not stop until America bends to their every demand and everything that has made our country great is destroyed. This is the fight of our generation, and this is why I am here. I'm Kelly Loeffler. This is who I am. This is what I believe. As an outsider to Washington, I know I have to prove it to earn your trust and your support through my votes, through my priorities, and my actions. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Thank you. May God bless Georgia, and may God bless America.
Let's see, is there anyone, did they cut the feed? Maybe. That's Kelly Loeffler now. Loeffler, not Loeffler. Kelly Loeffler. That's her live announcement. She is in the governor's
Georgia,
office.
And may God bless America.
Yeah, the feed, I think, is that was the end of it. They have. Let's see. Is anybody else going to say anything in this? This is looks like the feed is over. They are winding down. The governor of the state of Georgia now exiting with Kelly Loeffler. She has given her speech. I'm Kelly Loeffler, and it's Loeffler, not Loeffler. This is who I am. This is what I believe. As an outsider to Washington, I know I will have to prove it to earn your confidence and support with my votes, my priorities, and my actions. She says she is pro-life. She believes the abortion on demand culture is wrong, and she will support the measure pending in the Senate to curtail abortion and impose a 20-week abortion ban in the country. She says she will work with President Trump to continue, quote, the incredible economic progress our nation has seen because of the president's policies. We are growing our economy and jobs at a record pace. Every day, new jobs are created for working moms and dads, young graduates, or a waitress just looking for a chance in Congress. I may not be the loudest voice in the room, but you don't have to be shrill to be tough. And when it comes to fighting for Georgia, I will never back down. That is Kelly Loeffler. Brian Kemp adding she'll stand on immigration. She will fight with the president. She will support his agenda. She will oppose the impeachment effort. That she's pro-life. She is a Christian, calls herself a devout Christian, grew up on a farm. She introduced herself by saying, I grew up on our family farm, the fourth generation of corn and soybean farmers. I was shy with braces on my legs and braces on my teeth. We lived simply. Life revolved around farming, church, school, and 4-H. There was a rhythm to our lives. We planted in the spring. In the summer, I showed cattle at the county fair. In the fall, we harvested. Every Sunday was for church and family. I attended public schools and helped pay my way through college waiting tables. Hard work, faith, and family. Those aren't political slogans for me. They're a way of life and the foundation of everything I believe. There you have it. Kelly Loeffler, the next senator from the state of Georgia, whether you want her or not. While on the Facebook Live feed, there are a lot of angry people chiming in that Brian Kemp had betrayed the voters of Georgia, had betrayed people, had stabbed voters in the back. He would be a one-term governor. Here's the reality. If Kelly Loeffler goes to Washington and she stands with the president, opposes impeachment, and supports pro-life measures, all the people who are outraged today will be outraged in 6 months if anyone dares question Kelly Loeffler. That's the way politics works these days.
As both sides target Georgia for 2020, Erick gives you the news you need from a Georgia perspective.
Well, there we have it, folks. Kelly Loeffler. She is going to be Georgia's next senator, appointed. She's the senator designate, I think is the appropriate official title. She is she's Brian Kemp's pick to replace Johnny Isakson in the Senate. Isaacson spoke on the floor of the Senate yesterday, focused on bipartisanship. Isaacson very big on bipartisanship. And the governor today essentially introducing Kelly Loeffler as someone who would stand with the president against the Democrats. Loeffler herself called herself pro-life, devout Christian, worked on a farm, was raised on a farm, had braces on her legs and her teeth growing up. Now she is a self-made businesswoman, although Elizabeth Warren would beg to differ on the idea of anyone being self-made. This is interesting to me, this rollout and the reaction from the base. It's a very split reaction from the conservative base in Georgia over Loeffler. A lot of very vocal, angry people who wanted Doug Collins, in large part because they believe that's what the president wants, and we're in cult personality days. I got to tell you, I don't think Doug Collins had a shot the moment his supporters went to work for him to essentially demand it would be him. There was, I'm told, behind the scenes, I've spent enough time now talking to some of the folks behind the scenes that there was consideration of Doug Collins. But when it became clear that they were going to be that supporters of Collins were going to be open and aggressive about it, that turned off the governor. And it turned off the governor for a number of reasons. One, and most importantly, actually, the governor has spent the last year working very hard to make sure people know he's his own man. He has been cast by the Democrats all along as just a flunky for the president doing the president's agenda. And he's worked very hard this past year to show he's his own man with his own ideas. And while he supports the president, he's not the president's guy. And to be bullied into putting Doug Collins into a position would, one, set a precedent that he could be bullied, and two, would reconvey to people that he's not his own man. He just does the president's bidding, and he didn't want that. So it was a dangerous gamble and ultimately a losing gamble for the Doug Collins folks to rush out there and say that he would be the guy. And that forced the Kemp administration into a decision to find someone else. There were several people on the short list they looked at and ultimately decided they wanted someone who could make a play for suburban voters, particularly suburban women who have consistently in the past voted Republican, but with Donald Trump in office have veered towards the Democrats or have just sat it out. They want someone who can mobilize women in the suburbs to come back and vote for Republicans, and they decided someone like Loeffler, given her background and her resume, poor family, grew up on a farm in 4-H, regular churchgoer who grew up, became a successful businesswoman, put herself through college by waiting tables, and now owns the New York Stock Exchange, that she would be someone who could get conservative women who don't like the president in the suburbs. Now, there are a lot of conservative activist women who hate this idea and are mad at the governor. I'm getting actually some text messages even right now while I'm on air from people who thought she came across as robotic in her delivery. She's new. She hadn't done this before.
30.
She'll get comfortable. She's going to have time in Washington to get ready and to fire up a campaign movement for herself. I think that will work well for her over time. It's going to be interesting to watch this rollout happen in real time as she takes her Senate seat after January 1st. We'll be back with more and get your thoughts as well. Welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here. I have put up at theresurgent.com, if you want to see them for yourself, the opening remarks from Senator-designate Kelly Loeffler. I've been saying, I'm going to have to get out of this habit now. I've been saying Loeffler, but it is pronounced Loeffler. And she made her remarks about 15, 20 minutes ago. I have gotten the prepared remarks. I have posted them now to the Resurgent. Go to theresurgent.com. They're at the top of the page. And meanwhile, happening concurrent to all of this, we have the impeachment inquiry in the House Judiciary Committee. We'll fire up some of this. The Democrats, you should know, only invited their own constitutional experts, not any of the ones Republicans wanted.
Carl Montgomery, professor of public interest law and the co-director of the Supreme Court Litigation Clinic at Stanford Law School. She is the co-author of several leading case books, including a monograph entitled Keeping Faith with the Constitution, and dozens of scholarly articles. She served as a law clerk to Justice Harry Blackburn of the United States Supreme Court and as a Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice.
Yeah, okay. We'll go back to this if they say anything good. What was really good and what really got fired people up is Congressman Doug Collins, who, again, this is another reason why the governor didn't want to pick Doug Collins, because Doug Collins is right where we need him to be. Some of his opening remarks before the House Judiciary Committee.
This is sad. So what do we have here today? You know what I'm thinking? I looked at this, and what is interesting is there's two things that have become very clear. This impeachment is not really about facts. If it was, I believe the other committees would have sent over recommendations for impeachment. Now they're putting it on this committee because if it goes badly, I guess they want to blame Adam Schiff's committee and the HISPC and others want to blame this committee for it going bad. But they're already drafting articles. Don't be fooled. They're already getting ready for this. We've already went after this with the Ukraine after numerous failings of Mueller, Cohen, annulments, the list goes, emoluments, the list goes on. But the American people are actually failing to see us legislate. But if you want to know what's really driving this, there's two things. It's called the clock and the calendar. The clock and the calendar. Most people in life, if you want to know what they truly value, you look at their checkbook and their calendar. You know what they value. That's what this committee values. Time. They want to do it before the end of the year. Why? Because the chairman said it just a second ago. Because we're scared of the elections next year. We're scared of the elections that we'll lose again. So we've got to do this now. The clock and the calendar are what's driving impeachment, not the facts. When we understand this, that's what the witnesses here will say today. What do we have here today? What is really interesting over today?
That was Doug Collins speaking just a short time ago. We've got a bunch of Democratic witnesses. The Republicans have just put out a video of these Democrats who are going to be testifying today. They're constitutional scholars, according to Jerry Nadler. The Trump campaign has just put out this video, Meet the Democrats' New Impeachment Witnesses.
I was at the University of Pennsylvania Law School yesterday where I teach a class, and my class is still in therapy.
I'm a registered Democrat and have been my whole life.
There are other bad things in the world to fear, including, of course, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III and ICE agents who are out of control.
On the Republican side, it's largely not fact-based.
There are all kinds of things that the president has done thus far that already, I think, would reach that level most likely.
Even if as a progressive you would believe, as I do, that I should be paying higher taxes.
Noah, you do urge Congress to start thinking clearly about the power of impeachment if President Trump does indeed invoke emergency powers after this tonight.
The courts block you, and then eventually Congress sets out to impeach it.
Basically, point being, these are progressive Democratic activists who have long wanted to impeach the president of the United States. And they very much look like they are Poindextery academic Democratic progressives. We'll get into we'll spend a little more time on this, but we got other stuff we got to talk about as well after the Loeffler situation and the ongoing fallout and whatnot. But I want to spend just a moment If you'll allow, I got a couple of Georgia-related things I want to talk about, one of which is a brief defense of Chick-fil-A. And I meant to do this the other day, and then we hit Thanksgiving and all, but Chick-fil-A, I've been critical of them and how they've handled the Salvation Army situation. I think they did a bad job, and it suggests that there are people within Chick-fil-A who do believe the left-wing attacks on the Salvation Army. By the way, Pete Buttigieg is under attack for being homophobic. Pete Buttigieg, the gay mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is being attacked by left-wing groups because he had the audacity to put on a Salvation Army apron and ring the bell to collect donations to feed the homeless. They really are out to get the Salvation Army, which is incredible. And I think Chick-fil-A handled this situation terribly. I think that they have essentially affirmed through their silence the left-wing attack on the Salvation Army. Chick-fil-A has the right to spend money however they want. Chick-fil-A has the right to do whatever they want. Chick-fil-A has the right to give money or not give money, and no one is entitled to Chick-fil-A's money. And I think we got to lay that on the table. There are some people who just think that once they start giving to a nonprofit, they can't give to any other nonprofit. I think that's wrong. But I think they should have handled the communication of this differently. But I need to defend Chick-fil-A on something. They're being attacked for giving money to the Southern Poverty Law Center in 2017. Interestingly enough, it was 2017. It's just come out. But I need to put this in proper context for you because I think this is an unfair attack on Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A has its foundation. It has board members of its foundation. And at the end of each year, the members of Chick-fil-A's foundation, the board members, are given a small pool of money that they themselves can designate to any organization they wish to give money to. And one of the outgoing members of the board of the Chick-fil-A Foundation, himself or herself, I forget which one it was, designated the money to the Southern Poverty Law Center. They shouldn't have done it, but they were allowed to do it, and they were on the board. They had the privilege and the right to do it, and it's not Chick-fil-A's fault. They waited until they were leaving the board, and they did something like this, and I think it was wrong. And the reason I think it was wrong is we need to step back a little bit in history. There is a man some of you know. His name is Floyd Lee Corkins. Floyd Lee Corkins went to the Southern Poverty Law Center's website and saw that the Family Research Council, an organization that I support, is considered an anti-gay organization by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And Floyd Lee Corkins bought a bunch of Chick-fil-A sandwiches for the Southern Poverty Law Center staff. He saw on the Southern Poverty Law Center site that it listed the Family Research Council as a anti-gay organization, and so he went out and he bought a pile of Chick-fil-A sandwiches for the employees of the Family Research Council. And his intent was to go to the Family Research Council and feed the employees of the Family Research Council Chick-fil-A sandwiches after he had murdered them. Floyd Lee Corkins went to FRC, and his intent was to shoot and kill the employees and stuff their faces with Chick-fil-A sandwiches. He did not make it past the guard. The guard was shot, but the guard was able to shoot Floyd Lee Corkins. He did not kill him. Floyd Lee Corkins is in jail. And we know what he did. We know why he did it. We know he was inspired by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the Southern Poverty Law Center has never apologized for it. The Southern Poverty Law Center was also one of the websites that was drawn that James Hodgkinson used to research who he should target, the man who attempted the mass assassination of Republican members of Congress. We know that the Southern Poverty Law Center was a site they used. And so here comes a Chick-fil-A donor well after the Floyd Lee Corkins incident who gives money to the Southern Poverty Law Center. I don't think it should have happened. But, this is the point. That person, whoever it was, had the right to do it. That person had the ability, the willingness, the right to be able to give this money. It was their right on the board of the Chick-fil-A Foundation to do as they exited the board, to designate money to a nonprofit that they wanted, and that's what they did. And I'm okay with that. I wouldn't have done it. The other members of the board didn't do it. This one person did it, but it wasn't Chick-fil-A's fault. And I don't think Chick-fil-A should be blown up for it. I don't think Chick-fil-A, there are things I think Chick-fil-A has done wrong in its handling of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and its handling of the Salvation Army. This is not one of those things Chick-fil-A did wrong. To the extent it was wrong, it was putting someone on the board of the foundation who would do this. But that person also voted to give money to the Salvation Army, as far as we know, and to support the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Maybe this was a person who voted no. I don't know what the votes were. Maybe this person regularly voted no and at the end of the tenure decided as a protest to do this. But Chick-fil-A at the time was doing good work, and Chick-fil-A still does good work. I had Chick-fil-A for breakfast this morning. Full disclosure. I really hate boycott culture. You know, one of the things that I'm doing with this program, in addition to being supported by listeners, is working with local advertisers around the state. And in fact, if you want to advertise on the show, we're across the state now. We are, Rome, Dalton, Jasper, Clarksville, Athens, Vidalia, Valdosta. Where else are we? There are a number of other places down in South Georgia. We got another couple of stations, big stations coming on in Middle and South Georgia. We're across the state of Georgia. Well, I'm hoping to be in Columbus and Savannah and Carrollton and Greensboro and Augusta. But we've got a dozen stations now. We've got more coming. Quitman's in there. Bainbridge, I believe, is coming. And Waycross and Brunswick. And we're growing. And there are a lot of businesses in the state that want to have a statewide presence, not just a local presence. And I'm hoping to get support from those as opposed to some of the national brands that you hear advertising. Now, I'm an Omaha Steaks endorser. I love me some Omaha Steaks. In fact, if you go to omahasteaks.com right now and put my first name, Erick, E-R-I-C-K, in the search bar, you can get a fantastic deal on bacon wrap filet mignons for Christmas. It's a great deal. But, you know, I used to advertise for Harry's Razors, and I use Harry's Razors. In fact, I advertise for Harry's Razors because I was a customer of Harry's Razors. I don't like to advertise for anyone unless I know them, particularly these national brands. But I've used Harry's Razors for years. If you watching me in the live camera today, I didn't shave. I didn't jump in the shower until like 8:45 this morning. I was rushing. I was distracted by all the Loeffler stuff. But Harry's Razors canceled the ads because left-wing groups protested and said that I was not a good person to advertise for them. And there's a lot of left-wing pressure out there. And one of the things we decided to do with advertising for the show was to go with local businesses in Georgia. And as we pick them up, to let them know that you're going to come under harassment. You're going to be harassed. You're going to get left-wing activists who come after you for advertising with me, and many of them will be people who tell you that they're residents of Georgia, and they're not. There are paid operations that do that, and you get a bunch of harassment. And that's one reason we're going slow with ads and building relationships with local people. If you want to advertise, let us know. Happy to run your ads here across the state of Georgia, not just on one local station, but across the state. But harassment of advertisers of conservative radios and conservative outlets happens. And it's been happening a lot to Chick-fil-A, and it looks like Chick-fil-A is tired of it. They want to grow their business further, and they're caving into the pressure, and it's not going to matter unless they go full progressive, and maybe they will. I doubt they will. I think very highly of Dan Cathy and his family, and I think he understands what's going on here. I think Chick-fil-A handled the Salvation Army situation poorly, and I've expressed it. But I also think that this boycott culture on the right, and I understand there are a lot of people who say, well, the left does it, we should do it too. I'm not willing to I don't have enough time in the day to keep up with who I should boycott. Do you know on the left now they actually have an app where you can put in a product in the grocery store or a business and find out whether or not you should boycott them? Do they give enough money to Planned Parenthood or should you avoid them? Seriously, there is an app for that. It is a religious thing for the left these days, to the extent that they have developed an app where you can determine from your app whether an organization or a product or the company behind a product are worth supporting because they're progressive enough. I don't have enough time in the day for that. All I know is I like Chick-fil-A, so I'm going to go eat there. Even if I disagree with something they've done, I'm not going to go boycott them. I'm not going to go boycott any other company out there that I can think of unless they're truly offensive to me in some way. And I can't think off the head. I think they're probably, like, my wife doesn't like to go shop at Dick's anymore because they funded so much anti-Second Amendment advocacy work when they decided to stop selling guns. They wanted others to have to stop. But life's just too short for me to worry about too much of that stuff. And you too. Life's too short, too complicated to worry about all that.
Erick Erickson gives you the information you need and the truth you demand.
Okay, my buddy Brent he's calling me out. If he were in front of me, I would give him a nice pat on his shoulder. He had shoulder surgery. He says, I'm the guy who's been bad-mouthing Chick-fil-A's drive. I got to tell you, I hate the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. While I will go to Chick-fil-A, I even went through the Chick-fil-A drive-thru today. Do you know why? Because I have the Chick-fil-A app. And the Chick-fil-A is right outside my neighborhood. And I figured out on a school day, if I can go between 7:40 and 8 a.m., there is no one in the drive-thru line on a weekday. Now, if I were to go between 7:40 and 8 a.m. on a weekend, on a Saturday, the line would be down the street at the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. It is the slowest drive-thru in America. And apparently there are some Chick-fil-A drive-thrus that actually have angels from heaven there assuring an efficient process, but not at my Chick-fil-A. At my Chick-fil-A, it's one of those double lanes until you funnel in to get to, and you can't get out. And so you got to sit there. I have sat in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru line for more than 15 minutes. Try not to get my blood pressure up. It's like purgatory. And I believe the Cathy family are a bunch of Baptists, but they clearly believe in purgatory. And they want you to experience it in the line at Chick-fil-A while you're waiting for 10 or 15 minutes in the drive-thru for the idiot in front of you who's so busy texting that he can't see that the car in front of him has moved up, and you got to wait. Or do you honk your horn and do you look like that guy and you're right there by the windows of the restaurant and everybody's going to stare at the jerk who honked his horn at the idiot who was texting and didn't see there's nobody in front of him anymore. And even the girl is hanging her hand and head out of the window waving to try to get his attention to getting to pull up, but he's too busy texting. And you're thinking, but that's his fault. It's not their fault. No, but the reason he's there texting is because he's already sat in the line for 10 freaking minutes waiting for a chicken biscuit. Y'all, and I disagree that the peppermint chocolate chip shake is worth waiting 15 minutes. Now, if they had the Chick-fil-A brownie again, this is really why I'm mad at Chick-fil-A. I loved the brownie. I loved that Chick-fil-A brownie with the walnuts on top and the fudgy icing, and they got rid of it for that chocolate chip cookie. And the cookie's fine. I like the cookie just fine, but it's not the brownie. It is not the brownie, and I would love for the brownie to come back. And in fact, I've got Dan Cathy's cell phone, and I have really had to restrain myself from texting him about the brownie. I've been really tempted to demand the brownie come back. But they won't do it. And in the meantime, I got to wait in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. I did not intend to go on a tirade about the Chick-fil-A. Brent, it is all his fault. He has shaped the show today. You can blame him. I will give you all his email address and you can complain. We've got to move on to other things. When we come back, can we talk about the Republicans in Congress who I'm not sure what they stand for anymore other than flinging poo at people who criticize them? It's really gotten my hackles up, some of the attacks on not just Brian Kemp, but conservatives who are actually putting forward good ideas to advance the country. 30. You got a bunch of, monkeys flinging poo in Congress on both sides now. Neither party has ideas anymore. Neither side has ideas. What the heck are we doing as a country when everybody's just protecting the precious, and the precious is in their cult of personality when there are real ideas that really matter that shape the future of the country? And nobody wants to discuss them. We should discuss those ideas when we come back. Hello, welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show across the state of Georgia. The phone number, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Kelly Loeffler has made her official debut announcement. There is breaking news in this. She has her campaign now saying that she will write a check for $20 million. $20 million to get her up and running. I can tell you, in fact, if there are any program directors for the different stations listening right now, the campaign reached out to us to see if we would run ads on this show, because they know if they run ads on this show, then they can immediately connect across the state, north, south, east, west, from the Chattahoochee to the ocean, from the mountains to the Florida line. And we said no, because there are rules regarding campaign advertisements. Now, there's a super PAC that has reached out, and those rules are different. The reporting requirements, there aren't reporting requirements. It's just a regular commercial advertisement at a regular rate. But the political ads would put local stations in a very awkward position if they were running on the network. They would be running in local markets, and local markets would have to file paperwork according to various rules, and that just complicates things for local markets. So we've turned down all political advertising from the campaign, and we will from all the other candidates out there as well. I'm happy to have her on. In fact, we have invited on Kelly Loeffler to talk. I'll try to get an interview with her as quickly as possible, and you can always send me questions you think I need to ask. You can email eric@theresurgent.com. Remember, it's ERICK. You can get me on social media as well, EW Erickson on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the like. But we won't run political ads from the campaign, because that would be a nightmare, a headache for local stations and reporting requirements. I don't want to burden local stations by doing something like that. But we're happy to have her on. In other campaign news out there, Kamala Harris has dropped out. And I want to play for you some of the audio because I'm sorry there are stupid people in the media. And we've heard from pretty much all the stupid people in the media in the last 24 hours. In the last 12 hours, really, since Kamala Harris dropped out. Some of the stupidest commentary in America has happened in the last 12 to 16 hours after Kamala Harris dropped out.
We also can't ignore the fact in this crowded field that there seemed to be a focus on her, particularly in the last couple of weeks, about her failings without recognizing how important her voice was. It wasn't just her campaign, it was who she was seeking to speak to and with. You know, there was such a focus on Iowa being a majority white state. But the fact of the matter is, this presidential primary is going to be won and lost in the states that are majority people of color, and women of color are going to be key. So, you know, it's really sad. It's a sad day for Kamala Harris to exit the race and still have candidates in that primary who haven't raised as much money, who didn't qualify for the debate stage this month as she had, who are still, who don't have a discernible plan to build a multiracial coalition that will win in the states that Trump won last time. Mm-hmm. It's a sad state of affairs to have 6 white candidates on stage, many of whom don't necessarily speak with black women who are the powerhouse voters. And we're at this moment where we went from the most diverse set of candidates in the history of certainly my lifetime to an all-white stage.
To an all-white stage. You know why there's an all-white stage? Because the black voters prefer a white candidate. I realize there are some people out there who they think that your skin color needs to align with your candidate choice, but that, of course, is racism. The black voters prefer the old white guy. They didn't prefer Kamala Harris. Just keep listening to this.
I worked for Sarah Palin. I carefully watched and covered the campaign of Hillary Clinton. I do think that women are still held to different standards as candidates. They have to have well-run campaigns. Never mind that Donald Trump didn't have a campaign. He literally flew around with hope ironing his pants. They have to be perfect on the stump, which I never saw her stumble. Joe Biden is beloved. I'm a fan. He's never perfect on the stump. I mean, I do think there is a gender piece here that we still suck at talking about.
No, you're right, and I don't mean to cut you off. You're right. Women are
She told the guys to shut up, all right? We need to shut up now.
I'll say this, though. You women are held to a different standard, and black women especially held to a different standard.
I agree. And black women, though, by the way, voted for Trump in the lowest numbers, so they can say they told us so.
Well, my big complaint with Kamala Harris's campaign was I didn't really understand what the message was, what was driving her. She came out of the gate and was so fantastic in that huge rally. It was so well executed and orchestrated. She looked like someone who was really going to have a top flight campaign. And then as the months went on, she never got that bump.
Yep, she never got that bump. Do you know why she never got that bump? Because her campaign was terrible. It had nothing to do with her being black. It had nothing to do with her being a woman. Listen to Julian Castro, one of the lightweights running for president who won't get out of the race.
I will say that the way that the media have treated Senator Harris in this campaign has been something else. In the last few days, to see articles out of Politico, the New York Times, Washington Post, that it basically trashed her campaign and focused on just one small part of it. And I think held her to a different standard, a double standard, has been grossly unfair and unfortunate. I'm glad that she's going to keep fighting in the United States Senate. And I believe that she and I share a very common vision for the future of our country. I'm glad that she's going to be fighting.
Now, the New York Times story and the Politico story that he's talking about are Kamala Harris's own staffers throwing each other under the bus. I mean, the reality is that for weeks now, she has been hinting at her campaign being in trouble and it being out of gas and having no vision, and it was collapsing around her. And her staffers started speaking out to the media. Let me read you part of the New York Times story. One advisor said the fixation that some younger staffers have with liberals on Twitter distorted their view of what issues and moments truly mattered, joking that it was not President Trump's campaign that should be taken offline, as Ms. Harris urged, but rather those of her own trigger-happy communications team. This is the New York Times headline, How Kamala Harris's Campaign Unraveled. Subtitle, Ms. Harris is the only 2020 Democrat who has fallen hard out of the top tier of candidates. She has proven to be an uneven campaigner who changes her message and tactics to little effect and has a staff torn into factions. In early November, a few days after Senator Kamala Harris's presidential campaign announced widespread layoffs and an intensified focus on Iowa, her senior aides gathered for a staff meeting at their Baltimore headquarters and pelted the campaign manager, Juan Rodriguez, with questions. What exactly was Ms. Harris's new strategy? How much money and manpower could they put into Iowa? What would their presence be like in early vote states? Mr. Rodriguez offered general tentative answers that didn't satisfy the room, according to two campaign officials directly familiar with the conversations. Some Harris aides sitting at the table could barely suppress their fury about what they saw as the undoing of a once promising campaign. Their feelings were reflected days later by Kelly Mellenbacher, the state operations director, in a blistering resignation letter. This is my third presidential campaign, and I've never seen an organization treat its staff so poorly, she wrote, assailing Mr. Rodriguez and Ms. Harris's sister Maya, the campaign chairwoman, for laying off aides with no notice. With less than 90 days until Iowa, we still do not have a real plan to win. And this is the problem with Harris. It has nothing to do with the media double standard. It has nothing to do with her being black. It has nothing to do with her being a woman. It has everything to do with her campaign being incompetent. Y'all, I have run campaigns. I've never run a presidential campaign. I've been involved with presidential campaigns. I've never run one. But I've run campaigns at the state level. I've run campaigns at the local level. I've run campaigns at the federal level. I've been consultants for campaigns. I wound up running a campaign because the campaign manager was so passive-aggressive, he stopped returning phone calls from even the candidate. And they wound up putting me in charge, and I was just the freaking lawyer for the campaign. I know how to run a campaign, and I could tell you with Ms. Harris's campaign, the problem with her campaign is not that she was black. It had nothing to do with her being a woman. It had everything to do with incompetence. and not her own incompetence. Kamala Harris has good political instincts. In fact, if you read this New York Times article, you get the sense that if Kamala Harris were allowed to run her own campaign, she would have a winning campaign. But instead, one of her good political instincts was to listen to her campaign advisors. The problem is she hired terrible campaign advisors, including Rodriguez. So she listened to people who had bad advice. Her advice was to go around Iowa, flying under the radar, doing small events. Build up her name recognition with people in Iowa who did not know her, build her trust, and then go from there. And that would have been a genius strategy for her to do. It's what Pete Buttigieg did. It's working for him now. He's ahead. Instead, her campaign decided they lived on Twitter and they needed to live on Twitter as a campaign. They needed viral moments that exploded onto the scenes, that exploded into the national press. She had the debate moment with Joe Biden that caused her to spike in the campaign polling. And then Tulsi Gabbard slayed her on the debate stage and she never recovered. Gabbard just savaged Kamala Harris. And it did not work well on the campaign stage for Kamala Harris. It did not work well in her reaction to it, her arrogance about it. It did nothing to help Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, then dismissive of Tulsi Gabbard, saying that she was ahead in the polls and Tulsi Gabbard wasn't, just gave a feedback loop that she was somehow arrogant and out of touch. None of this helped her. The back and forth hurt her. And the Tulsi encounter on the debate stage with her was brutal. And the more people found out about her, this is what they found. They found that I was looking for the Gabbard audio. I don't have it handy. I was going to play it, but what they found with Kamala Harris is that every other day she changed positions. Now, here's what I'm going to do, because I want to spend a few moments on this to give you an idea of how campaigns work or should work. And you will be able to see immediately the problem with the Kamala Harris campaign. I have started campaigns. I have worked on congressional campaigns, statewide campaigns, state legislative campaigns, local campaigns, Senate campaigns, House of Representatives campaigns. I know how to put a campaign together. It's what I used to do for a living. I was quite successful at it. I have a phenomenal win-loss record. I think I won 11 races and I lost 5 races. I know how to run a campaign. And Kamala Harris had good political instincts, but she hired bad people who did not know how to run her campaign, and they ran her into the ground. And I want to spend a moment walking you through what you do. If you're thinking of running for office, if you got a friend out there who's thinking of running for office, call them right now. Tell them to tune in and listen, and I'll walk you through what you need to do as a startup campaign. It's what she clearly did not do that her opponents did and that she needed to do.
Politics, news, religion. Erick Erickson talks about all the things you're not supposed to talk about every weekday, and some cooking, too.
It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show across the state of Georgia. If you're just tuning in, Kamala Harris's campaign has imploded. You got a bunch of Democrats out saying she was treated badly because she's a woman, it's sexist and all. They're not saying that about Elizabeth Warren right now, just about Kamala Harris as she drops out. They're saying it's because she was black and Iowa's a bunch of racist white people. They didn't say that about Barack Obama when he won Iowa. No, it's all about Kamala Harris. It's grievance mongering, making her out to be a victim when she's no victim. She just ran a terrible campaign. So what do you do when you run a campaign? Well, what I would do and what most campaign professionals do is they begin by sitting the candidate in a room with their spouse and their closest friends who know them best, not their children. Rarely do you put the children in the room. And you sit around the room and you talk openly and critically about the candidate. You badmouth the candidate, all the things you hate about the candidate. And 9 times out of 10, it is the spouse who will say the most critical things about the candidate. So you get them in the room, and then you make all of them leave the room except the candidate. Once they've said all the bad stuff about the candidate, you make them leave the room. And you look the candidate in the eye, and you say, what else? Because you are your own worst critic. And oftentimes hearing the criticisms of your friends and family and your wife or your husband makes you realize there are other things to be critical of yourself about. And you open up and you have at it and you say all those bad things. And you bring everybody back into the room and you say, okay, what are the strengths? And you do a list of all the candidates' strengths. And then you put them on a board and you say, who hypothetically in the primary, who's going to be the stiffest competition? And if you're Kamala Harris, your stiffest competition is Joe Biden. Because Elizabeth Warren is battling Bernie Sanders for the left. You've got Pete Buttigieg, who's a relative upstart candidate. You want to run against Joe Biden. Joe Biden's your competition. What defines you against Joe Biden? What are your strengths compared to his weaknesses? What are your weaknesses compared to his strengths? And from there, you kind of come up with a message. And she should have been able to come up with a message. That message should have then generated her strategy. Let's just say for Kamala Harris, what's her strength? She was a prosecutor. She has been in public service all of her life, just like Joe Biden. That kind of cancels each other out, except she's been in prosecution. She's been making America safe again. She's taken a tough stand. She's been willing to stand up to her own side when it comes to crime. She's a bold truth teller when it comes to that. She's hardcore when it comes to crime. I mean, this is what her campaign would tell her. As opposed to Joe Biden, who was in the Senate and then he was vice president. But Joe Biden has never had to deal with victims of crime. Joe Biden has never had to prosecute people in soft cases where it's hard. She's had to do hard things. And you get the idea from Kamala Harris. She's willing to do what's right. If you're Kamala Harris, now you and I can disagree with this, but this is her campaign. She's willing to take the hard stands and the right stands. And that contrasts with Joe Biden. When she goes after Joe Biden on busing, she can tell Joe Biden, you know what, Joe, you had to compromise to get stuff through the Senate, and I understand that, but I'm willing to take hard stands. And compromising with a bunch of segregationists on busing was the wrong thing to do. I'm willing to take hard stands and do the right thing. When Elizabeth Warren comes out with Medicare for all, and Kamala Harris can say, listen, I realize she wants Medicare for all because that's what a lot of the progressive base wants right now, but most Americans don't want that. They're scared of it. And when we tried Obamacare, we lost the House and we lost the Senate. I'm willing to take the hard stand and do what's right, and what's right is allowing Americans to keep their health insurance. That was her original position, and then she decided it was a good position, and she flipped. Had she done this messaging, which she clearly had not done, she would have been able to pivot every single issue to, I'm willing to I'm willing to do the hard thing because it's the right thing. I'm not going to bow to pressure. And so when you've got the progressive horde comes out and says, we need to give illegal aliens healthcare rights and make every illegal alien an American citizen, no matter what, she could say, you know what, some of these people are criminals and we don't need to make them American citizens and we don't need to give them healthcare. She was originally not for healthcare for illegal aliens, and then she changed because she thought that's what the base wanted. She could have said, if she had done this messaging process, you know what, I'm not going to give illegal aliens healthcare insurance when they come to this country. It just provides another incentive to come to this country illegally. We need to welcome in illegal aliens. We need to make them part of our community, but we don't need to bankrupt our healthcare system. I'm willing to do the hard thing because it's the right thing, even though all of you want to do something else. She could have done this, and she could have made that her message. Instead, what they did is they wanted these viral moments, and they went back and forth on, oh, this is our message this week because this is what the base wants. Oh, we've taken a poll. The base has changed. We're going to change too. It was a wishy-washy campaign. It had no principle. It had no message. It had no strategy. You see, what your strategy is when you come up with the message is you plot out, all right, I don't think I'm going to do well in Iowa, but that's okay. I don't have to win Iowa to become the Democratic nominee. Bill Clinton did not. Michael Dukakis did not. And on it goes. But I'm going to make a big play into New Hampshire because I got to offset Elizabeth Warren. And then I'm going to go spend a lot of time in South Carolina because I'm a black female and I'm going to be able to convince black voters in South Carolina that, by God, I am the candidate for you, not Joe Biden. And she didn't do that. She didn't do any of that. She didn't have a message, which caused her to not have a strategy. And what her campaign did is tactics. And tactics without an underlying strategy are useless. You got to have this overarching strategy, and that strategy is based on your message. That message is based on your strengths and weaknesses versus the strengths and weaknesses of the person you're trying to beat, which is Joe Biden. Instead, she had a series of tactics. Today, I'm going to have a hot viral open mic moment that makes me sound awesome. Tomorrow, I'm going to confront Joe Biden. The next day, we're going to have a debate. The next day, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to have another viral moment. Those viral moments completely disconnected from each other. It did not work for her. Her campaign failed. It had nothing to do with her being black. It had nothing to do with her being a woman. It had everything to do with her running a terrible campaign for which she needs to take responsibility. So I need to give a shout out and thanks to some friends of mine who, but for them, this show would not be possible. And that is First Liberty of Georgia, First Liberty Building and Loan. They've been dear friends of mine for a while, and I reached out to them and said, look, I want to get the show off the ground. I need some help. I'm doing it out of pocket. And they have stepped forward and have continued to be a sponsor of this program, and I thank them very much. And I need to encourage you to reach out to them for business. They've helped me. I want to help them. You can help them, and you can help me by helping them. Go to firstlibertyga.com. If you've got a business, a small business, medium-sized business, you want to become a big business, you need access to capital, you need a loan, you don't want to go through a bank, you don't want to go through the bureaucracy of a bank, go to First Liberty. The Frost family, they're good people, really good people, good business people, and they want to help you. They want to help the show, and I would love to steer business their way, to thank them for what they've done. FirstLibertyGA.com is their website, and I can't encourage you enough to support them. Now, I have put off this story. I've put off talking about the story. I have put off saying anything about this, and I want to talk about this. It has burned up the internet. Peloton is the cult that makes the exercise bikes and now the treadmills. And they've released a holiday ad of a young guy with a young, super thin wife with the gorgeous child in the gorgeous house and in the gorgeous, perfectly manicured, decorated, landscaped everything. And he buys his wife an exercise bicycle. Here she comes down the stairs with her eyes covered, holding her child's hand to discover the Peloton.
Now,
a Peloton? Give it up for our first time ride.
All right, first ride. I'm a little nervous, but excited. Let's do this. 5 days in a row. You surprised? I am. 6 a.m. Yay.
Rising with the sun.
That was totally worth it.
Let's go, Grace in Boston. 50 rides.
She just said my name. A year ago, I didn't realize how much this would change me. Thank you.
This holiday, give the gift of Peloton.
And dude's like, yeah. Okay. I don't hate the ad as much as a lot of people hate the ad, but it's still a dumb ad. Men in my listening audience, don't buy your wife exercise equipment for Christmas. Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, he and I were texting back and forth the other day. He said, "Are you doing a podcast of your show?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Do you want to do a second podcast?" I said, "I don't know. What would it be?" He said, "You and I should do a podcast on advice for newly married men on what not to do. Number one, don't buy exercise equipment." And that was before the Peloton ad came out. And then the Peloton ad comes out, and it's newly married. Well, they can't be too newly married because they got a kid who's walking around who looks like she's at kindergarten age, but it's a young couple. And oh my goodness, he's given his wife an exercise bike. Now, clearly in the ad, she wanted a Peloton. She had to have wanted that Peloton because she was very excited to have that Peloton. But people saw this ad, and the comments on this ad are insane. In fact, there was so much blowback on social media about the Peloton ad that the Peloton stock price dropped 10%. Now, if you're not familiar with it, I've got a buddy of mine who works for the governor, loves his Peloton. In fact, I got a bunch of friends who have Pelotons and they love them. They've got a new treadmill that's come out. They've got a Peloton store in Lenox Mall in Atlanta. And I don't think I want one of those bicycles. I don't think I want to sit on one of those things for an hour pedaling. I can't say what. A buddy of mine says you sit on one of those tiny little seats the first time and it hurts, and the second time it hurts a little less, and the third time you just can't get enough of it. I'm like, no, we're not going to go there. I like a treadmill. I typically leave the show. I go walk and then go to CrossFit. I haven't been this weekend. It's driving me crazy. But I'm just pedaling for an hour on one of those tiny little seats. My butt's too big for one of those things. I'm too big for one of those. And they want to encourage you to stand, I guess. But it's a cult. There are people who love Peloton. I've got multiple friends who have them, and they're not just selling you a bike. Anybody can sell you an exercise bike. They're selling you this community with these coaches online who you watch the video, you do the class with them on the TV screen. They've now got coaches who do the running as well. So you're on the treadmill with the Peloton treadmill and the running. I wouldn't mind one of their treadmills, but they're like $4,000. I think I'll pass. They're supposed to be very good, though. But that social media reaction, Twitter is not reality. This, believe it or not, there's a tie-in to other stories, the Kamala Harris story. Again, if you're just tuning in, Kamala Harris has dropped out. I read this in the last half hour. Let me read this paragraph again. This is from the New York Times story last week about the implosion of her campaign. What's so hilarious is that the New York Times did the story at the end of the week last week, right after Thanksgiving. A lot of people were buzzing about it and saying how terrible it was. How dare they do this to Kamala Harris? She's going to Iowa, blah, 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 blah. And then she dropped out. I wonder if she read the story and decided, man, my campaign really is a joke. But this is the key paragraph. One advisor said the fixation that some young staffers have with the liberals on Twitter distorted their view of what issues and moments truly mattered, joking that it was not President Trump's account that should be taken offline, as Ms. Harris had argued, but rather those of her own trigger-happy communications team. Twitter is not reality. Twitter is not. The 10% of Twitter's users shape something like 80 or 90% of the conversations on Twitter. It's not reality. And the things that get buzzed about on Twitter the most are not the things that anyone else is really talking about. Very often, most frequently, most likely, the things people are screaming about on Twitter really don't matter in the real world. In fact, same with a lot of social media. Take the Kelly Loeffler situation. Conservative activists in the base are split pretty evenly on whether or not it was good to go with Kelly Loeffler. There are some seriously livid people angry with Brian Kemp, pledging to oppose her. In fact, I don't think Doug Collins is going to challenge Kelly Loeffler. I don't think he is. I think what's going to happen is someone like Paul Brown, who's really got nothing to lose, is going to challenge Kelly Loeffler. And I think that's going to matter to a degree because in a runoff situation or in a jungle primary situation, he could cost her some votes. And so the governor's got to be leery of this, and she does too. But what I also find more and more is that the aggressively vocal conservative activists online who are all buzzing about the same thing, they're just as unreflective of reality as the progressive activists online are. There really isn't a connection between the two of them in a way that really matters to anyone. And yet you've got this constant buzz from these activists out there as if what they care about in the here and now, what they're yelling about, is the only thing anyone anywhere ever cares about. But you go to your local watering hole, you go to your local restaurant, you go hang out with your friends at church or wherever you go where you have friends in the real world, and none of them have heard about it. None of them know about it. None of them are whipped into a frenzy about it. Yet what we're seeing with this Peloton ad is that the frenzy on social media can affect significantly the stock price and the value of a company. What we're seeing with social media is that its rudderless direction led by mobs can shape the direction of a presidential campaign and ultimately cause it to be run off a cliff. Social media more and more is a bad thing in the way it's being used by a lot of people, myself included, arguably. It's not a good situation that so many of us are led. Now, I less and less use Twitter. When I first got started in radio in 2011, I regularly interacted with my audience. In fact, it was something I would do would be to say, hey, if you're online listening right now, tweet at me. And it was a very interesting way to be able to see the number of people in real time who were actually listening to the show. Now, ultimately, I realized that, gosh, I was doing evening drive time in Atlanta. People are tweeting at me. They're probably driving. And I don't want to be responsible for someone wrecking by saying, tweet me. But less and less now, I don't really interact with people on social media anymore that much unless I know them. In fact, I've got, if you want me to see your tweet, here's the dirty little secret. If you want me to see your tweet, you got to be following me, because there are a lot of people who tweet at me, but they don't actually follow me. And I don't really care what those people think. I've got no reason to care what those people think. If they're not interested in following me, they typically just want to yell at me anyway, a bunch of trolls. I tell people all the time, there's that story in the Bible where Jesus cast the demons out of the possessed men. They come out of the cemetery to Jesus, and they're clearly possessed, and the demons are speaking through the men. And Jesus says, "What is your name?" And they say, "Legion, for we are many." And they say, "Son of man, let us go into the herd of pigs that was passing by." And there were so many of them, they filled this herd of pigs, and the herd of pigs went nuts, ran down the hill into, I think, the Sea of Galilee, and they all drowned. What I tell people all the time is what Scripture leaves off, because people in the first century wouldn't have understood this, is that when the demons got out of the pigs, because, the demons don't die. When the pigs drown, the demons don't die. They go somewhere. And where they went was Twitter. They all got Twitter accounts, and that explains how social media works. It really is like the Horde of Mordor comes after me on Twitter all the time. So I've got my Twitter set where unless you follow me, I can't even see what you're tweeting at me. So if you want me to pay attention to you, you gotta follow me on Twitter. You can't just tweet at me on Twitter. And even then, I'm more and more. I can see when stuff is pulsing, when stuff is trending, that people are buzzing about it. But I'm also more and more mindful that the things that are trending on Twitter in particular, not necessarily Facebook. Facebook is somewhat different. It is much more community-oriented. It's much more family-oriented. I'm afraid they're changing to be a little more like Twitter in some of their latest changes. But with Twitter, it is the social media mob generates conversations, and the way it typically works is the mob then shapes the media, and the media then shapes the news, and then the news then tries to shape the public. But so much of the public has tuned out the news these days, it's harder and harder to shape the public. There's a corollary here on how do you reach out to people if you're a campaign. If you're the Harris campaign floundering about, how do you reach out to people? More and more people are watching streaming services. You don't get advertisements on the streaming services. So how do you connect to those people? More and more you got to do door-to-door. You got to hire people and go knock on doors. It's one thing that the Kemp campaign did very well outside of Atlanta in 2018. They went door to door. They knocked on people's doors. They made personal connections with people. One of the things campaigns with a lot of money do that's really smart? They hire a bunch of volunteers. Well, they don't hire them. They're not volunteers. They put them on the payroll. And they send them, there's a program you can use. It's called Campaign Sidekick. In fact, a buddy of mine, a really good friend of mine, owns the company. The Georgia GOP just signed a contract with them. And you send paid door knockers into a community. Let's take Watkinsville. Outside of Athens, let's take Watkinsville. You hire 40 people. And you go into Watkinsville. You build a map, find all of the people who voted in 2016 and 2018. Those are the people who are absolutely going to vote in 2020. If you voted in 2016 and you voted in 2018, you're going to vote in 2020. So now organize them into a walk map. And so it takes all the people in Watkinsville and it organizes them in a walk map. So you're not knocking on every door in Watkinsville. You're only knocking on the doors of the people who voted in 2016 and 2018. Regardless of party, you want to knock on all of them. So you're skipping houses, and what Campaign Sidekick does is it lets you do a walk list so you can divide up those 40 people into sections. It'll section out Watkinsville, give a section to each person, and it will move them in a way where they're not crossing back and forth. They're moving in a logical order, very much like a postal route, like the mail delivery service that doesn't crisscross back and forth around the streets. You're doing it in order. And so you go out and you knock on all the doors. And you knock on the door and you say, what matters to you? The reason you do that is because that's an actual voter who actually lives in that area. You don't pay attention to social media. You don't pay attention to what people are saying on Facebook, or you don't pay attention to what people are saying on Twitter. You go actually door to door. If you're running for office, you get a Campaign Sidekick account. You go do this. It puts in an orderly fashion, and it gives you an app on your phone or your iPad, and you carry it with you, and you knock on the door, and you say, Mr. Bainbridge, What issue matters to you the most? And you know what Mr. Boehner may say? He may say Kamala Harris's campaign. He may say the Peloton ad. He may say whatever the outrage is on Twitter. But you know what he's probably going to say? He's probably going to say that a car took out a guardrail in the curve at the end of his street last year, and it had been put back by the city, and it's unsafe. It gets dark at night. People can't see. There's no sign. There are no reflectors, and no one's doing anything about it. And you knock on the door of the next person. And the next person says, you know what really makes me mad? The city recycling service is not on the same day as the city garbage collection service. And I got to remember 2 days a week to roll a trash can down. And I'm 70 years old and I don't like it. I just want to roll it all down on one day. And you knock on the next door and they have a different issue and you log them all. And going door to door, that gives you a real sense of what the issues are in the community. And so then you can shape your campaign and you can shape your campaign message and you can twist your message to fix those issues. And when you're just looking on social media trying to find out what everybody's outraged about, what your campaign is about is outrage. And when your campaign is about outrage, it's not about solutions. And people actually want to vote for someone who suggests they have a solution to fix the problem they don't like. And in an age of digital media and subscription services and no ads and hard to reach people on TV and radio and the internet, going door to door is going to pay off. If you're running for campaign, start knocking on doors today.
Honest news and conservative views.
I'm back. You know what? All right. I apologize. Not that we get a ton of phone calls, but we just hadn't been able to get the phone system working because the call screeners had to be at the dentist and the appointment took a long time. So my apologies to you. Happening right now, the Pamela Karlan is speaking. She's a Stanford law professor. They're inquiring about impeachment. This whole thing is so boring. I put it off until now. You can thank me for saving you at the end, right before something else comes on the radio.
Bribery at the time when the framers adopted this language in the Constitution was that bribery existed under the Constitution when the president corruptly asked for or received something of value to him from someone who could be affected by his official office. So if the House of Representatives and the members of this
is
committee
Noah Feldman talking. He's a Harvard law
the
professor.
Investigations either announced or undertaken was a thing of value to President Trump, and that was what he sought, then this committee...
I got to stop this. So, a listener just emailed me, Noah Feldman looks like he flew in on a broom from Hogwarts. Yes. Now I've got. Let's see. Where did this email go? Yes. So one of the witnesses here who's speaking today, Norm Eisen. He's the lawyer hired by Jerry Nadler to question the impeachment witnesses. He's a progressive activist. Norm Eisen is. This is an activist lawyer hired by Jerry Nadler. In November of 2016, Eisen tweeted his support for the anti-Trump movement, writing "Vive la Resistance." In December of 2016, he tweeted a joke about impeaching the president before he'd ever taken office. In December of 2016, he tweeted about ramping up to coordinate massive pushback against Trump. On January 20th, 2017, the day of the president's inauguration, he tweeted, "Let the battle begin." He's been an activist lawyer against Kavanaugh. He's been an activist against the Republicans. The guy genuinely despises the president, and he's asking a lot of the questions. Then Noah Feldman, the Harvard lawyer, has been an activist litigator, professor at Harvard, who does not like the president. It's striking to me that we got this happening right now, and it is so boring. But I got a great clip from Jerry Nadler from the Clinton impeachment days. Listen to this. Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader, sent this around.
The effect of impeachment is to overturn the popular will of the voters as expressed in a national election. We must not overturn an election and remove a president from office except to defend our very system of government or our constitutional liberties against a dire threat. And we must not do so without an overwhelming consensus of the American people and of their representatives in Congress of the absolute necessity. There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment substantially supported by one of our major political parties and largely opposed by the other. Such an impeachment would lack legitimacy, would produce divisiveness and bitterness in our politics for years to come, and will call into question the very legitimacy of our political institutions. The American people have heard all the allegations against the president, and they overwhelmingly oppose impeaching him. The people elected the president. They still support him. We have no right to overturn the considered judgment of the American people.
That was Jerry Nadler then, that impeachment needed to not be partisan and needed to not be narrow. It needed to be a bipartisan effort, and there was a more bipartisan effort to impeach Bill Clinton than there has been for Donald Trump. But my, how it's convenient for people to change their opinions depending on who's in charge. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. We'll take phone calls then.